Letter the 11th of Life in Mexico. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Life in Mexico by Francis Calderón de la Barca. Letter the 11th. Calle de Tacuba. The Leap of Alvarado. The Noche Triste. Sale of a curate's goods. Padre Leon. Leprosy. Pictures. The Annunciation. The Alameda. Paseo de Bucareli. The Viga. Indians in canoes. A murder. A country fete. Visit to the Colegio Vizcaíno. The Jota Aragonesa. Old soldiers. The street in which we live forms part of the Calle de Tacuba, the ancient Tlacopan, one of the great causeways by which ancient Mexico communicated with the continent. The other two were Tepayayac, now Guadalupe, and Iztapalapan, by which last the Mexican emperor and his nobles went out to receive Cortes on his entrance to Tenochtitlan. The ancient city was divided into 4 districts, and this division is still preserved, with a change from the Indian names to those of San Pablo, San Sebastian, San Juan, and Santa María. The streets run in the same direction as they did in former times. The same street frequently changes its name in each division, and this part of the Calle de Tacuba is occasionally called the Plazuela del Sopilote, San Fernando, and the Puente de Alvarado, which is the more classic of the 3, as celebrating the valor of a hero, while a ditch, crossed by a small bridge near this, still retains the name of El Salto del Alvarado, in memory of the famous leap given by the valiant Spaniard Pedro de Alvarado on the memorable night called the Noche Triste of the 1st of July, 1520, when the Spaniards were forced to retreat from Mexico to the mountains of Tepeyayac. On that sad night, the rain falling in torrents, the moon and the stars refusing their light, the sky covered with thick clouds, Cortes commanded the silent march of his troops. Sandoval, the unconquerable captain, led his vanguard, and the stern hero, Pedro de Alvarado, brought up the rear. A bridge of wood was carried by 40 soldiers to enable the troops to pass the ditches or canals, which must otherwise have impeded their retreat. It is said that in choosing the night for this march, Cortes was guided by the counsels of an astrologer. Be that as it may, the first canal was happily passed by means of the portable bridge. The sentinels who guarded that point were overcome, but the noise of the struggle attracted the attention of the vigilant priests, who in the silence of the night were keeping watch in the temple. They blew the holy trumpets, cried to arms, and awakened the startled inhabitants from their slumbers. In a moment the Spaniards were surrounded by water and by land. At the second canal, which they had already reached, the combat was terrible. All was confusion, wounds, groans, and death, and the canal became so choked with dead bodies that the rear guard passed over them as over a bridge. We are told that Cortes himself swam more than once over the canal, regardless of danger, cheering on his men, giving out his orders, every blow aimed in the direction of his voice, yet cool and intrepid as ever, in the midst of all the clamour and confusion and darkness. But arrived at the third canal, Alvarado, finding himself alone, and surrounded by furious enemies, against whom it was in vain for a single arm to contend, fixed his lance in the bottom of the canal, and leaning against it, gave one spring to the opposite shore. An Aztec author and contemporary of Cortes says that when the Indians beheld this marvellous leap, and that their enemy was safe, they bit the dust (comieron tierra), and that the children of Alvarado, who was ever after known as Alvarado of the Leap, proved in the course of a lawsuit before the judges of Tezcuco, by competent witnesses, the truth of this prowess of their father. In a hitherto unpublished manuscript which has come to light this year, in an annual called the Mosaico Mexicano, There are some curious particulars concerning the Noche Triste. It is said that the alarm was given by an old woman who kept a stall, and mention is made of the extraordinary valour of a lady called María de Estrada, who performed marvellous deeds with her sword, and who was afterwards married to Don Pedro Sanchez Farfan. It is also said that when the Indians beheld the leap, they called out, "Truly this man is the offspring of the sun," and that this manner of tearing up the ground and eating earth by handfuls was a common Indian mode of expressing admiration. However, Mexico is so rich in traditions, that when I particularize this one, it is only because we live on the site where the event took place. We went a few days ago to see some effects which are for sale, belonging to a cura who died lately, having heard that he has left some good paintings amongst them. We went in the evening and found no one but the agent, an individual in the Daniel Lambert style, an old woman or two, and the Padre Leon, a Jesuit, capellan of the Capuchin nuns, and whose face, besides being handsome, looks the very personification of all that is good, and mild, and holy. What a fine study for a painter his head would be! The old priest who died, and who had brought over various valuables from Spain, had a sister who was a leper, and who died in the hospital of San Lazaro. This dreadful scourge is by no means wholly unknown here, and though it is ordained that all who are afflicted by it shall be shut up in this hospital, I have met two persons, and one of these in society, who have the disease. For this house, which is very large, the executors ask a preposterous rent. The goods of the defunct, which were for sale, were ranged on long tables in a very large apartment. There were virgins and saints, surplices, candlesticks and snuffer trays, boxes of all sorts and sizes, an ill set parure of emeralds and diamonds, several good paintings, especially one of the Annunciation. There was the death of San José, various saints, etc., all religious subjects, as may be supposed. Two C n bought, one I greatly coveted. There were also two pieces of embroidered velvet, on which were the arms of Castile, said to have been hung on a portrait of Queen Christina when she entered Madrid. The agent begged C n to buy them, asking at the same time an impossible price therefor. There was, moreover, a large box full of relics from Jerusalem, which the padre told me could not be sold, but that I might choose whatever I liked, so that I returned home with various Agnus Deis, crucifixes, and rosaries. The next day a messenger from Padre Leon brought me the painting of the Annunciation, which I had admired so much, and which is a sketch of Bayo, a Valencian painter, from his own painting of the Annunciation in the Royal Chapel of Aranjuez, also the embroidered velvet, begging my acceptance of both. We have since wished to show our sense of the padre's politeness, but he will neither accept presents, nor will he visit any one but such as in the hour of need require his spiritual services. In the house of sickness and by the bed of death he is ever to be found, but chiefly if it is also the abode of poverty. In the house of the rich man he rarely visits, and then only when his presence has been requested, when he has been called in to administer spiritual consolation to the sick or the dying. But in the dwelling of the lowly, in the meanest and most wretched hovels, he has never to be sought. The guardian and friend of the poor, his charities are equally extensive and judicious. Yesterday being a fête day, the Paseo was very full of carriages, and consequently more brilliant and amusing than usual. This Paseo is the Mexican Prado or Hyde Park, while the Viga may be reckoned the Kensington Gardens or the Metropolis, only, however, as succeeding to the other, for there is no walking, which in Mexico is considered wholly unfashionable, and though a few ladies in black gowns and mantillas do occasionally venture forth on foot very early to shop or to attend mass, the streets are so ill kept, the pavement so narrow, the crowd so great, and the multitude of léperos in rags and blankets so annoying, that all these inconveniences, added to the heat of the sun in the middle of the day, form a perfect excuse for their non-appearance in the streets of Mexico. In the Alameda, however, which is so pretty and shady, it is very agreeable to walk.